community. Brennan here, excited to dive into a passage of Scripture for this daily Bible reading. It's our last daily Bible reading in our current series, Counterfeit, as we kind of are looking at these counterfeit idols in our lives, in our culture. We're going to be looking at money this week. It's going to be an exciting time. Would invite you to join us this weekend for Father's Day. We've got some fun stuff planned along with the last week of this series. And so we'd love to have you come and join us in person for both of our services. It's going to be a great time. I'm going to jump right into the passage. We are looking at Luke 19, verses 1 through 10. It goes like this. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man there was by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was because he was short. But because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He's gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." Powerful part of Scripture right there. And yeah, I just really have a simple kind of takeaway from this passage. And it's just the fact that our salvation, right, is obviously, it's not dependent on anything we do, right? It's dependent on Jesus and his sacrifice. And in that we get to rest secure. But Scripture is pretty clear that once we come to be saved, right, it's not as if we just stay the same person. There are signs and there are things, right? A lot of times the Scripture talks about fruit, right? In the concept of fruit, right? That we're trees and that we bear fruit, and that there's these tangible signs that mark those who have been saved, who follow Jesus now. And one of those things that we find often, and we find in this passage, Jesus literally says one of those signs is generosity, right? We have this character named Zacchaeus, who Scripture says is wealthy. And this is kind of paired up in Scriptures. You see a lot with the parable of the rich young ruler who asks God, what should I do? I've done all this stuff. I followed the law like this. And Jesus says, give all your money away to the poor. And the rich young ruler goes away sad. And Jesus kind of tells the story of, well, it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And then we have this passage, though, where a rich person, Zacchaeus, does come to faith and is told, "Salvation has come to your house today." And there's a really powerful part of the story. I mean, first of all, he says, I'm going to give half of my possessions away. That's first of all, crazy. But, right, it's a theme we see a lot in Acts as well as the believers, right? As people come to faith, there's this kind of idea of they're giving away their possessions to the poor. They're sharing their possessions for one another. So it's a common sign that is marking the life of a believer. But even bigger than that, right? Zacchaeus says, hey, if I've cheated anyone, not only am I going to pay them back what I've cheated them, I'm going to pay them back 4 times as much. And that kind of harkens back to this concept of restitution that we see a lot in the Old Testament, where if all the laws, right, in the law, we see, if somebody wronged somebody or took their property or, took one of their cattle and the cattle died while they were with them, there's this kind of concept that we see that not only was in the law were they required to pay back that person, but they were required to pay them back 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, right? There's all these laws. And so it's this concept of not only are you doing the bare minimum, but you're going above and beyond. And that's the kind of generosity that we're called, right, to be as Christians. It's not just the kind of generosity where it's like, oh, let me figure out my taxes and how much can I give away to get right off, right? That's great, and that's good, and you should do that. But what about the kind of generosity that says, no, like I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go 4 times above and beyond that? That's the kind of generosity that Jesus is calling us to, the kind that is painful, is scary, maybe even, is not safe, that the world might look and say, what, right? The world looking, and Zacchaeus says, no, like Zacchaeus didn't have to pay back. He didn't have to pay people back at all. He definitely didn't have to pay them back any more than what he wronged them, but he says, no, I'm going to pay them back 4 times. So I ask you, would you examine your life for areas maybe you aren't generous, but examine the areas of life where maybe you do feel like you are generous, and examine and say, am I really being generous there? Or maybe I'm playing things safe in my generosity? Am I just doing, kind of the pocket change that I know I can live without? Hope you guys have a great, great weekend, and we'd love to see you here on Sunday. See you guys later.